All right, guys, so it's a new day, and that means that the Democrats and the left are melting down over something, okay? And this time, it is over Greg Abbott basically coming out and saying that Texas is going to classify gender reassignment surgery or sex change operations on children as a form of child abuse. And the left is melting down over this, including two-time political office loser Beto O'Rourke, who actually is campaigning on this. Take a look.
If you are a transgender minor living in the state of Texas, listen. Right when you think Greg Abbott could not possibly get any worse after he abandoned all of Texas to freeze last year, he does. As of today, Greg Abbott has ordered that CPS or Child Protective Services now investigate every family of a transgender child for child abuse. It's right here. You can just Google it. Here it is. Not only that, but your teachers now are going to be fined if they do not report transgender children to CPS so they can be investigated for child abuse. It is a disgusting reminder that Republicans never cared about children. They only cared about unborn babies. Any child that is homeless, not white, or a part of LGBT, they do not give a about you. Republicans would rather watch transgender children K-word themselves than give them access to transitioning healthcare. With last year's freeze lifting COVID restrictions, and now this, Greg Abbott is responsible for the deaths of thousands of Texans. So f you, Greg Abbott.
I'm a non-binary youth in the education system of Texas. I was wondering what you were going to do to protect my rights and my parents' rights to be able to put me on testosterone.
The trans suicide rate has been the highest it's ever been in Texas since those bills have been placed.
I mean, we're seeing people trying to take their lives right now, and it's a tough thing for us to talk about, but you're right, we should say it out loud. So we speak about everyone in this state with pride. We talk about a Texas that is big enough for all of us. We target no one based on any difference between us, whether it is the color of your skin, your country of national origin, or the fact that you are non-binary. I think you're amazing. I'm proud of you. I want you to do great things in this state, and I'm going to support you in doing that. And I'm going to say that publicly as the governor of this state. That's going to be a big change for Texas.
It just feels like he would be defending me and caring about my rights as a trans non-binary person. It feels like he'd care and he'd actually listen to our voices and our thoughts about everything.
All right, guys. So as you can see there, that is Beto O'Rourke campaigning on this issue. Yes, he is making political ads basically in support of allowing children to medically/chemically transition before they turn 18, right? That is the issue that he's putting at the forefront of his campaign. If I had to guess, I think that Beto is probably headed for a third loss in a row when it comes to running for a major political office. I'm just saying, right? I'm just saying. I'm not sure if I would be putting this issue to the forefront of my campaign if I was him. But hey, it is what it is, right? It is what it is. Now, that being said, if you guys want to actually read more about the details of this law and what it means, I mean, the video that I showed you guys of one of the people being upset about it, she basically said some of the main provisions of the law when it comes to child protective services and, you know, reporting parents and teachers and stuff like that. So if you guys want to read about it, an article will be in the description. What I want to focus on for this video is actually to go over a conversation that I actually went over last night between trans men and conservative men, okay, in which they discuss issues related to, you know, transgender, biology, things like that, okay? Now, again, last night I made a video about this, right, in which they discuss does biology determine gender? There's also another part of the conversation, conveniently, that talks about whether or not children should be allowed to transition, okay? So I'm going to actually react to this conversation, and I think that would be more productive to talk about this in general rather than to go over the law in Texas so that we can understand all sides of this issue. But before we get in there, I just got to let you guys know this topic right here is not necessarily the most YouTube friendly, right? So with that being said, you know, I'm taking some risks talking about this. And if you want to support the channel, you can do so using the links in the description below. You can support the Patreon, you can support the PayPal, you can support the merch. There are multiple ways to support the channel if you would like to do so, including getting yourselves one of these signature racist mugs. That is a daily reminder of the definition of racist in 2022, according to the left, which is basically anybody that disagrees with the Democrat Party. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get into this conversation between trans men and conservative men about whether or not children should be allowed to transition.
Okay, so I work with children. This is where I have like the biggest problem with the trans stuff is with the children, because people, like I'm sure you guys would agree, you want to inject them with the hormones to stop their puberty, their normal puberty. They haven't even developed the prefrontal cortex yet, and you want to stop their natural puberty from occurring to affirm their gender, and then later on they regret it. I think that's not a good thing.
See that?
Yeah. I agree with that. And I'll go ahead and state my opinion on this topic right out from the front so that everybody understands where I stand on this. When it comes to children, right, people that's under 18 years old, I'm a conservative on this, right? I do not think that it should be allowed, okay? Now, when it comes to adults, people over 18, I'm a libertarian. You can do whatever you want to do. Freedom, okay? I'm not trying to stop you from living your best life, okay? So with that being said, I don't think that this should be allowed before a child turns 18. I don't think that they have the capacity to make those decisions, right? We already have laws in place that address this, right? For example, you can't own a gun right before you turn 18, or you can't drink alcohol before you're like 21, okay? You can't smoke tobacco, right? There's all types of goods and services that children can't get access to because it is harmful to them, or they don't have the capacity to make the correct decisions and be responsible with what they're doing, okay? And I don't see why undergoing a, gender reassignment surgery, an operation, a lot of these operations are permanent, or putting chemicals or hormones into your body, I don't see what the difference would be, right? In terms of making a child wait until they're an age in which they actually have the capacity to make a decision and understand exactly what they're getting themselves into. Right now, before they turn 18, hey, I'm all for them getting the help that they need, right? Getting the counseling services they need, whatever help that they need in order to mitigate the negatives of whatever gender dysphoria they're experiencing. I'm 100% on board with them getting whatever help they need to get, okay? But I'm not for them transitioning chemically, hormonally, or surgically.
That's why this is a loaded question, because transition can mean many things for children. Now, I totally, as a transsexual person, disagree with giving children hormone blockers, medication, surgery, but what I do agree with is...
Hey, good for you. Good for you. I like to hear that, right? I like to hear somebody with an opinion that, is trans, that is like, hey, you know what? I acknowledge that this might not necessarily be right, okay? I like to hear this.
Socially transitioning, which means why? Because I did that, okay? And I did that in the 60s and 70s. My parents dressed me like Buck. I was a boy. I didn't have any problems because I just lived, we used to call it a tomboy, right? So that...
And most tomboys, they're not, transitioning, okay? A lot of these women that call themselves non-binary specifically, they're actually just tomboys, okay? But because we live in 2022, they've basically replaced the term tomboy with, oh, you're non-binary, okay? Like that's a whole different like gender or whatever. When no, you're simply just a girl that has some masculine features and traits, and a vast majority of the time, those girls grow out of that stuff as they get older, right? They may maintain some form of masculinity or whatever in these masculine traits. That's fine, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're a boy or a male or a man, right? That's not what it means. Now, in the case of this person right here, they decided to transition. And that's fine, right? I have no issues with that whatsoever. They, waited until they was 18 and they transitioned, and that's how it should be. And this person looks just like a male, and they seem to be happy with the way they're living their life, okay?
It was totally, and I went through puberty and I did all the things. I do not believe children can make those choices, and I do not believe it's okay and ethical for a parent to make those choices for a child. But I do believe gender dysphoria exists in children. I had it, 100% it's there. But to give medication to a child is so unethical to me that you would actually, you're exactly what you said, you're stunting brain growth, you're stunting all of these things. They don't have enough research on it. So I'm in agreement with transitioning medically for children is not okay for me, but I do believe in a social space.
When you say a social transition, it's interesting to me because we can't control what happens in a social situation.
That's right. That's right.
So to me, and we talk about suicide rates among young trans people, this whole ideology is telling people to derive their value off of what somebody else is saying about them or what somebody else affirms to them. So we say that, society is the problem and we're not allowing people to be who they are, and that's why they're committing suicide. But maybe it has to do with the messaging that we're sending to these kids, that you derive your value from if somebody uses your correct pronoun, or you derive your value if this person accepts you for wearing a dress. Be who you are, but tell them to be empowered about it and not get that empowerment from somebody else.
I feel like that's
what he's saying is you need to self-validate, right? Which is one of those things I advocate all the time on my channel, which is self-validation, right? A lot of people, you know, they're having these issues in which they see themselves as, you know, as victims and, you know, society's against them, the world is against them because they are seeking validation from other people when you really should validate yourself, okay?
Really kind of inconsiderate to say that someone would take their life because what someone else says. To somebody, that is important. To somebody, I know have friends who their family does not use the correct pronouns and they've transitioned and they live in the same household. This person struggles with depression and anxiety. Could you imagine living in an environment like that where you're no longer validated? That's coming from your own parents.
But if you base your validation off of other people, this is a hard truth, but if your sole validation
no, you definitely have to do it. Listen,
I
could give
people,
a shit when everyone thinks about me. I do what I want. But for everyone, that's not the case because everybody has different personalities.
Right, but that doesn't make it any. That doesn't mean that.
But it's still. But you're not acknowledging. But you're not.
But that also means that we don't have to conform. Like the whole world does not have to conform to that, right? And that's part of the issue. Is like, listen, people who want to conform to it can conform to it, but you shouldn't be forced to because somebody's gonna feel bad about it. Okay, there's all types of things that people feel bad about that I feel bad about that I don't necessarily agree with. But I'm not going to force society as a whole to conform to me because I feel bad about something. Okay?
Not acknowledging, though, is that in that environment, it is not supported.
I'm acknowledging that. I'm just saying that we're saying that for some reason they should look for that validation from somebody else rather than find it within.
When you love somebody and you have a family, you want them to validate.
But you're focusing not on the individual, you're focusing on the people outside of that individual.
But the individual,
I'm focusing on empowering that individual.
But part of being a person is needing to be validated. You don't need to be validated ever in your life? From your family or your friends?
I get my validation from within, and then the
right. But if we're talking about children, okay, if we're talking, okay, I was an 8-year-old when I found out that I wasn't biologically male, right? I was 8 when I found out that I wasn't the same as my brothers, okay? And so going through that process, I attempted suicide 4 times because my mother was like, well, you are a girl. When you're 8 and you're 12 and you don't have anyone else that is in your space, when you don't have anyone else that lives in the same house as you to tell you you're okay, where are you supposed to go? How are you supposed to garner your own self-validation if the people that are raising you don't validate who you are?
Well, see, part of the issue here, right, and they're talking about verbal validation, right? The topic is really about should children be able to transition. There's not really that much evidence to suggest that transitioning, at least surgically, is going to improve mental health outcomes, okay? So let's actually click over here to read about this Swedish study here that was actually corrected recently after a reanalysis of the data. In October 2019, the American Journal of Psychiatry published a study from the Karolinska Institute in Sweden and the Yale School of Public Health, which reported that gender-affirming studies for gender dysphoric patients are associated with improved mental health outcomes. Looking at mental health utilization in the year 2015, a retrospective analysis showed that that the more time passed since surgery, the fewer mental services were utilized by patients, with an average 8% reduction in mental health utilization for each year following surgery. From this, the study concluded that surgery has a beneficial effect on mental health and that benefits continue to accrue over time. However, following a reanalysis of the data, this conclusion has now been officially corrected to indicate that there is no advantage of surgery. Now, there are other studies out there that, you know, do show that there's an advantage, and there's some studies that show there's not an advantage. So with that being said, again, I'm going to maintain my position here and say I think it's best to get people canceling, right, and whatever services they need to help them with whatever issues they're having as children with this, at the very least until they're 18, right, until they're old enough to where they can make a decision and understand that the ramifications, the potential long-term and permanent ramifications of their decision, right? Because for as many people that, you know, end up, you know, doing this and that are happy, there are also people that end up doing this and want to transition back. And unfortunately, after you go through some of these procedures, you know, this stuff is irreversible, right? You just can't transition back, okay? And that is why I feel like it's important to wait till you're 18 to make sure, hey, you know what? If this decision you want to make, that you need to understand this is a permanent decision a lot of times, and you got to stick with it, right?
As a father, you know, my duty is to raise my children the way I believe is right. And if my child somehow struggles with this, which is fine, we'll have that conversation. But I'm going to let it play out the way I believe it should be played out. And at 18 years old, you can do whatever you want to do. If you don't want to wear dresses, that's fine. I mean, just wearing if you want to dress like a boy, don't make you want to be a boy. Don't mean you have to be a boy. My mom was a tomboy, and my mom had me and my brother, and she's a woman, you know, and she lives like that. But, you know, you may want to dress a little different. Maybe a boy want to do cheerleading or something like that. Right. But that don't mean you need to transition to something else. So I want that to play out until my child is old enough to make that decision on their own. Also, you have to teach your children to have balance, because if you just want mommy and daddy to acquiesce to everything you want, that's not reality. You have to understand that mom and dad may not see me this way. They love me. I see myself this way, and I disagree with how they speak to me or how but I love them as well. I love, like my son, if he said that he was, and I'm a Christian and I don't believe in homosexuality, I don't. I respect anybody that feel that way. I'd never, you know, protest you at all. If my son came to me, it would be a struggle for me to want to go to his wedding. I'm just going to be honest. But I think that my son should understand, this is the way my dad feel. I love him. This is the way I feel, and we have mutual love. And that don't mean I hate you. That just mean we disagree. And I wish that same sentiment would be, and I think it's the same on this panel. Like, there's no hate in any of this. Right. I love every single person on this side. And we may think of things differently, but we love each other. It can't be one-sided. I am lucky.
Yeah, I think I definitely agree with Tatum there, and I think that's probably a good spot to kind of end this video, right? In the sense that, yeah, I mean, regardless of who you are or what you want to be, you know, I think it's important that people understand each other and, you know, have a basic level of respect for each other, right? Respect for each other's beliefs. That means not forcing your beliefs on other people, but at the same time, you know, being cognizant of how other people feel, you know, in regards to who they are, right? And I think if both sides of the aisle kind of did that, the world would be a better place, right? But that being said, I don't think that, you know, helping children transition chemically or hormonally or surgically is a part of that, right? I think that it's best to just wait till they're 18, and then they can make whatever decisions they want to make, get them whatever help that they need before then, right? So they can get through it and just go from there. I think that's the best solution in my opinion. Let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.